Playing through Immortality was without a doubt one of the most interesting experiences that I've had in recent years. The game itself is framed around finding out what happened to the actress Marissa Marcel and why none of the 3 movies that she starred in ever saw the light of day. You do this by sifting through footage of the movies themselves, rehearsals, interviews and auditions, whilst using this eye tool in order to unearth additional footage which contains similar elements. There's obviously a little bit more going on than first meets the eye, but unfortunately, my hands are tied when it comes to how much I can really say without running headfirst into spoiler territory. Scrolling through the comments on the game's trailers and reviews, you're going to find a lot of people proclaiming that this should have just been a movie or a miniseries rather than a video game. However, having completed the game myself, I can confidently say that I don't believe that Immortality could possibly exist in any other format than it does today, at least not without losing much of what makes it so special. It's kinda like saying a jigsaw puzzle could have simply have been a picture. Whilst technically true, it's not actually a very productive argument, and in my honest opinion, it's rather silly. Don't get me wrong, I certainly do have more than a few criticisms in relation to the way that things work here, but the developers have taken a risk and developed something that is fairly unique, and it's that uniqueness that I really have to praise. Immortality is an experience that has been designed and developed around its narrative, and due to how closely these 2 elements are linked, I doubt we're going to see anything similar for a very long time. Beyond the narrative that I really can't even touch on lightly due to spoilers, the 3 standout elements in my mind are the acting, cinematography, and audio design. On the acting front, each cast member has done a wonderful job of portraying not only their in-movie roles, but the decades that each movie was shot in. For instance, in the first movie Ambrosio, the acting can actually come across as rather wooden and yet exaggerated, but that's how movies were shot back then. It's literally the desired outcome.
I pity you, but I can do no more. You must leave.
I have no choice then. I will not leave this abbey alive.
If you lost your senses, kill yourself and you lose your claim to salvation. You forfeit your soul.
I care not. Paradise here with you, or perdition without. Tell me you will conceal my story and retain me as your companion, else this dagger drinks my blood.
Hold. Stay then, Enchantress. Stay for my destruction.
And we got it.
We also need to remember that we're not just watching movie clips, we're analysing them, scrubbing back and forth over the same clip multiple times, and often in slow motion. I'm willing to bet that there's a great number of big budget Hollywood productions that wouldn't stand up to this level of scrutiny, and that's why I do consider the acting within Immortality to be some seriously impressive stuff. Authenticity is also boosted by the developers sticking to era appropriate filming techniques, from special effects right down to the frame rates and aspect ratios used to capture the footage. Now obviously, if you're going to be jumping back and forth between various clips, music in particular is going to cause some challenges, so rather than having the music directly burned into each clip, the game instead opts to make use of a dynamic soundtrack that does an excellent job of not only filling in the silence and portraying emotion, but it also acts as a subtle guide. Though you will have to play it for yourself to understand exactly what I mean, and you're just going to have to trust me right now when I say the audio design is certainly a highlight of the experience.
Come around here, Captain.
Get up, Father Ambrosio. You must regain your strength.
Be around like this.
You see, this is why.
With all that said, as much as I'm gushing praise right now, Immortality is far from perfect. I suppose the most damning thing that I have to say about the game, barring the technical issues that I'll touch on a little bit later, is that I never truly felt like I was in control of pretty much anything. As I mentioned earlier, the core of the game revolves around clicking on various points of interest within the video clip in order to unlock yet more video clips that you then scrub through in order to discover more of the story. It's pretty much the digital equivalent of taking a jigsaw puzzle, never showing the reference shot or the number of pieces it contains, and then burying the individual pieces in a large sandpit, and then expecting the player to fish out each piece and work towards completing the puzzle. The problem is, it seems like the game actively withholds a certain number of video clips until a certain criteria has been met, meaning that you may feel like you've exhausted all the clips that contain, let's for the sake of argument say a crucifix, only to find out later down the line that additional clips containing crucifixes come to light. If I'm correct, this sort of thing changes the perception of the eye mechanic from an investigation tool into what is effectively a random clip generator, robbing the game of the only element that could really be considered gameplay. I won't lie, the moment-to-moment experience was definitely way more of an effort than it was enjoyable. Once I got a decent grasp of like 90% of the narrative, I was still left with a solid 50% more work left to do in order to reach that 100% completion in terms of achievements and seeing all the available footage. Though it does have to be said that not everybody is going to come across the same video clips and revelations in the same order, and so the pacing is likely going to vary greatly from one player to the next. I personally reached the end credits in a little over an hour, meaning that I'd revealed what happened to Mrs. Marcel and figured out a couple of things, but at the time I still had very little idea to how or why anything had happened. It took me a solid 5 or 6 more hours to get there. The second, and by far most glaring issue that I have with the game, is the choppiness of video playback within the engine that a lot of people seem to be suffering from whilst playing at a 60Hz refresh rate here on the PC. I've skimmed through dozens of YouTube videos and those recorded on the Xbox look great, a few on the PC don't look too bad, but the vast majority are just as choppy as what I was experiencing whilst trying to play the game at a 60Hz refresh rate. Granted, as video game performance testing is quite literally a big part of my day job, I'm likely going to be a little bit more susceptible to certain forms of stutter and judder than most, but honestly I do find Immortality's lack of smoothness to be completely unacceptable and is something that needs to be addressed ASAP. Currently, the only way that I've found to get mostly smooth video playback is to either set my monitor to an 80Hz refresh rate, or by capping my frame rate to 80 FPS whilst using a high refresh rate FreeSync compatible monitor, or just a high refresh rate monitor and accept that we're going to get a bit of judder. Meaning that if you've got the choppiness and you're limited to a 60Hz display, it doesn't look like there's much you can do to avoid it. Here is a quick example. On the left we have footage captured from a 60Hz display, and on the right we have footage captured from an 80Hz display. This entire video, barring this 60Hz clip, was recorded at 80Hz, meaning that we're not only seeing the judder associated with displaying 16, 24 and 48 FPS video on an 80Hz display, we also have the added layer of judder by displaying an 80Hz recording on a 60 FPS YouTube video. As much as, despite its issues, I still want to recommend the Immortality experience to everybody, I have to draw the line at this 60Hz issue, meaning that if you're running a 60Hz display, I seriously recommend that you wait until we get a response from the developers, and whilst it's not everybody that's suffering from this issue, from the evidence that I've seen, I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending the game to anybody on a 60Hz display, which is unfortunately like 80 to 90% of you. Once this problem is sorted, however, or if you're already on a high refresh rate display, I really wouldn't hesitate. Immortality is not going to be for everybody. Its awkward pacing and lack of agency are really going to bother some people, and I can totally respect that. Personally, I love it when developers take risks on new ideas, and I really do think we need to see more of it in future, so fingers crossed Immortality's technical shortcomings don't hinder this developer's future creative freedoms. For now though, that is going to be me done for today, so from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for stopping by and watching, and until next time, we'll catch you later, bye bye.